Good morning. Welcome to the ICSS Sunday morning program at the Niebuhr Proctor Marxist Library. My name is Raj Sahai. The acronym ICSS stands for the Institute for Critical Study of Society, which was formed at the Niebuhr Proctor Marxist Library in 2004. So this is the 20th year. This was to preserve Marxist heritage and to support the struggles for social justice and the struggle ultimately for socialism leading to communism, because without that, we're not going to get social justice. Before we proceed, let us observe a minute of silence in respect of the victims that have died and injured, and many injured since the last Sunday in this nearly 300 Moscow theater terror victims, and today is a day of mourning in Russia. And of course, added to that, since we last met, 1,000 more civilians in Gaza who have died and have been injured in what in reality is a genocidal war on Palestinians by Israel. And in many in Donbass and Ukraine from a proxy war that NATO has imposed in Europe against Russia. So let's take 60 seconds for silence. Okay, thank you. The opinions expressed in our forum are only those of its authors. We believe Marx's work remains relevant, who in his 11th thesis on Feuerbach said, the philosophers have interpreted the world in different ways. The point, however, is to change it. Yesterday was also in India Martyrs' Day, the 23rd of March, a day honoring Bhagat Singh, who was hanged by the British. In India, new developments have also been taking place for more than a decade. These are related to the world that is changing ever since the collapse of the USSR in 1991. The neoliberal era began in the last quarter of the 20th century, and that is the subject of today's talk by Basudev. Economic crises that became apparent in the same period continue. Neoliberalism, is the irresolvable stage of crisis of capitalism, and that is the specific subject of today's talk. Our speaker today is Basudev Chowdhury from Kolkata, India. He is an organizer, an activist, and an organic intellectual. He's a physicist by education. He is a leader in a new Marxist-Leninist Communist Party based in West Bengal, India, called People's Brigade, which he, among others, helped form in the past few years. After the Communist Party of India, Marxist, which is still the largest communist party by membership, was routed from West Bengal, which it ruled for over 30 years by Trinamool Congress, a bourgeois political party led by a fiery orator, Mamata Banerjee. People's Brigade has organized Bidi, which is a rolled tobacco leaf, which workers smoke, particularly the proletarians, the low-wage workers. In West Bengal, he organized that. And majority of its workers, beauty workers, are women. Basudev Chowdhury is currently writing a book on the same topic, yet unpublished. He lives and works in Kolkata. Please join me in welcoming our guest speaker, Comrade Basudev Chowdhury. Basudev, it is all yours now.
Thank you, Raj. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
So thank you all for inviting me to speak at ICSS. And it is an opportunity to speak about our proposition on the current phase of capitalism and the origin of the crises that are being manifested in this era. And these models are actually prepared by our party, People's Brigade. So it is an opportunity to speak before you about our party's view on this. So I want to start with now. I think I can share the slide now.
Yes.
So I think
yes, we
you
can
could see
see
the slide.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So in fact, we are now organizing people in West Bengal. We have started our work from West Bengal of India. We are predominantly organizing the rural working people, not only BD workers, all other types of rural workers, and definitely majority of them are women workers. And we have already been successful in organizing them in various movements. So with that, let us start with what we are today for. So slide, yes.
Yes, we got the new slide.
Okay, so the topic today that I'm trying to speak before you on is neoliberalism, the new class correlation and new age crisis. So I will focus on these two topics today, the new class correlation and the new age crisis. Actually, we have very short time span for describing how we define and explain neoliberalism in general. So that may take actually several hours. So I will focus only these two parts today, the new class correlation and the new age crisis, because these are the most important part for activism. So as Marx said, in fact, to what Raj started with, it is not only the question to explain, it is the question to change, to action. So that is the principal thing. So on that basis, today I am going to focus on these two particular parts. So this is the brief overview. First, some short introduction on the subject, then People's Brigade's gross view on this. 5 features of neoliberalism that has been identified by People's Brigade. And the key concept of this explanation of neoliberalism by People's Brigade is the temporal mode of production that I will discuss briefly. Sorry. Then I'll focus on the change in class correlation and the new age crisis, and with a very little conclusion, because still we cannot conclude. We have to conclude through movements and through agitations and finally through revolution. So that would be the perfect conclusion to any analysis. So what is conventionally thought of neoliberalism amongst the conventional Marxists, the mainstream communist parties, mostly the economists, are these basic things that neoliberalism is a set of policies. It is a set of policies that were adopted by many of the countries through TINA consensus, that there is no other alternative type of consensus. So that came up in 1970s. And it is defined as 4Ds. What are the policies? These are the 4Ds: deregulate, destroy, decrease, and defund. And it is generally identified as a new social order ruled by the rich for the rich. And most importantly, about state, what people are saying about neoliberalism is that state is retrieving. On the perspective of Keynesian state, which was known to be a welfare state, which are giving some welfare to people, some relief to people, now state is retrieving. So it is withdrawing its welfare policies. So it is a great reversal from Keynesian state. So these are the basic features which are conventionally thought of to explain neoliberalism. And in this era, the views on imperialism is quite different among Marxists even. For instance, some people think that globalization has abolished imperialism. Since it is globalization, so how can imperialism coexist with globalization? So this is a view of the people like David Harvey and others. Others feel neoliberalism has led to neocolonialism. Some people directly claim this, like ultra-left wings and Maoist communist parties. They think neoliberalism has led to neocolonialism. I'll show that some mainstream communist party thinkers, they also, through their, although they are not claiming that directly, but their work is actually in an indirect way, they are claiming the same thing. And most importantly, international finance capital, since we are now in the era of international finance capital, so this has led to the mutation of inter-imperialist rivalry. So the inter-imperialist rivalry, that was the key concept of Lenin's time to what imperialism brings to us is the inter-imperialist rivalry. So that has been muted in the international finance capital oligarchy. So that are the common concepts that are going on. So I will talk about what People's Brigade's view on these things a little later. I'm sorry. Before that, let me just brief the chronology of neoliberalism in the world. In 1970s, it started with the end of Bretton Woods system. So the gold reserve, the gold standard has gone. Now any country can use their own currencies for foreign trading. But we all know that all the currencies have different powers. So it is actually a new superpower of the imperialist countries through their currencies. So that started through the end of Bretton Woods system. Then in 1979 to 80s, the great Deng Xiaoping theory in China. There are many things, but the principal call was to open up, and to open up. That was the principal call. In fact, in 1985 in Russia, we can see the same call, perestroika and glasnost, we all know, market socialism, and to open up, and to open up. That was the call. And in 1991, we have seen the collapse of Soviet Union. In 92, the great book by Francis Fukuyama, End of History. In the same year, we faced a very new thing, that is World Wide Web, www. whatever it is. So now we are in the age of internet, and that is we can see, we can say that is the real implementation of globalization has started from that www dot. And then in 95, WTO was on the floor. So neoliberal globalization was just spreading and it was overwhelming the world. And just at that moment, we generally talk about the 2008 financial crisis, but I will try to point out before that, that is in the year of 2000, the dot-com collapse. So that was possibly the first superior key signal that this system will not last. But at that time, that was managed by very different types of economy, and also through trading this internet and web things to the inter world. But that was the first signal. Although in 1992, in Japan, there was asset bubble collapse. That was also very big financial crisis. But in 2000, the dot-com collapse, that is the Y2K problem. Usually we know it as the Y2K problem. So that happened. Later, we are faced with the 2008 subprime crisis. So I'll come to that later. So this is the gross chronology. Now, we have, suppose these are the theories which are conventionally thought of. Now, there are three types of important questions. The one big question is why austerity? We all know, especially in US, people have fought against austerity. So why austerity? We all know that in the pre-capitalist society, the popes, the gurus, they campaigned for austerity, they campaigned for sacrifice. Why they campaigned for sacrifice? The philosophy was the philosophy of sacrifice. So why they campaigned for that? Because for a very simple reason, that productivity was very low in that society. So if there are so many people and such low productivity, then you have to leave people with the philosophy of sacrifice so that the ruling class can consume more. So that is why they campaign for austerity, they campaign for sacrifice. But in the most modern phase of capitalism, in the 21st century, in a completely consumerist society, how the states are campaigning for austerity. The states are actually implementing austerity. How? Why? So that is the big question. Added with this, there are two economic questions. One is, since it is now globalization, where the excess surplus is coming from, or whether it is at all coming. So on this line, two types of Marxists are already divided, like David Harvey and like Prabhat Patnaik. They are divided on these lines. David Harvey is not with the line that there is still excess surplus, there is still imperialism exists or something like that. Prabhat Patnaik is talking about excess surplus and globalization. I will talk a very little about that. And the second economic question is, now we can see that money is making more money in the financial market. So money is making more money. That means money does not need labor to make more money. So M to M plus delta M directly. We do not need M to C to M plus delta M. So that is the present financial market in the phase of derivative trading. Then, is there any surplus? And if there is no surplus, if there is no labor involved in this M to M plus delta M, then there is no exploitation. Then there is no question of capitalism itself. So that is pointed out by another great economist, Yanis Varoufakis. He was, we all know, he was the finance minister of Greece in the Syriza time. So I'll talk to his point of view a little. And the three class questions. One is, now we can see a huge numbers of highly paid workers. For instance, in US, we can see 30K to 50K dollar per month. People are getting their salary. They are workers, but they are getting so much of salary, workers or employees. So are they proletariat? Are they getting this amount of salary only due to their huge amount of productivity? One is this question. Second is the self-employed workers that has emerged in huge numbers throughout the world, especially in global south. And what about the small peasants? Are they really exploited? Because the self-employed workers or small peasants, they do not sell their labor power to any capitalist owner. They are selling their products directly to the consumers. So are they exploited? If they are not exploited, then how they are connected to capitalism? And in all this scenario, who are the today's proletarian class? So these are the questions that we are going to answer in this talk. So what I have told that globalization, so is globalization is accompanied with excess surplus? So Utsha Pattanayak and Prabhat Pattanayak has written a book in this subject. Very recently, they have got prize from Monthly Review Press for this book. The book is actually very good. But I'm not going to detail of their work. Just the principal theory of theirs is imperialism is getting their surplus. They are getting surplus from the pre-capitalist mode of production. They are considering the self-employed and peasants and similar workers of the global south as their economy is of pre-capitalist form. So imperialism is living on the basis of draining surplus from pre-capitalist form of economy. That is their principal theory. They have arranged it in a very sophisticated way, but this is the principal theory. I would say they are very close to what is happening, but we are in a very different standpoint on this. I would explain my point in my later slides. And the another person is Yanis Varoufakis, who was Greece's finance minister at that Syriza time. We all know about Syriza, and at that time, Tsipras was prime minister, and he called for a referendum and then betrayed it. Yanis Varoufakis was the finance minister. He actually resigned at that time. So he's a very honest man. And as far as I have read his books, I can see he has a very good understanding of Marxist economic theory. Although they do not say much about this, but if you read his books, you can see he has a very good understanding of Marxist economic theory. He has pointed out the money-making machine like M to M plus delta M as, since this is just, you can give some rent and you are getting interest, and then M to M plus delta M, that you are doing with a heavy technology and heavy technocracy. So that is why he is claiming that this is techno-feudalism. Because capital means the economic law of capital means M to C to M plus delta. So money will exploit labor to get more money. But now money is making more money. So it is not in that sense capitalism. So it is a new form of capital, and he is claiming that this has started with privatization of internet and the central bank's response to the 2008 great financial crisis. In fact, how IMF dealt with Greece, that was faced by him. So possibly that has made a bias to him in this respect, as I think. So these are the gross viewpoints, but these are very major contribution, I think. Although we have a much more different viewpoint to explain all these things, because we need a consistent theory that can explain all these different points together. So what are the People's Brigade's views on this neoliberalism? So these are the neoliberalism's policies. And what is People's Brigade's view? Firstly, People's Brigade's view is that neoliberalism is not just a set of policies that we have a choice to adopt. It is the newest phase of capitalism. So capitalism cannot run without the so-called policies of neoliberalism. That is why no country can adopt some alternative policy to neoliberalism, because this is the newest phase. Secondly, neither imperialism has abolished, nor colonies, the so-called the old colonies, has revoked, nor the inter-imperialist rivalries muted. They are in fact highly intensified this time. Third, that is the key point that we identify neoliberalism with, that is the temporal mode of production. I will briefly discuss about this temporal mode of production. I cannot go into the detail because it will take several hours to describe it. And since my focus today is to different parts, so I'll just briefly discuss about this temporal mode of production. And neoliberalism, we are identifying neoliberalism by its 5 central features. And the crises of neoliberalism are exhibiting 2 types of tendencies. One is a continuously deepening crisis, another is cyclic crisis. So these are superimposed as a gross crisis in the age of neoliberalism. That is what People's Brigade's gross view. So the 5 central features of neoliberalism that are identified by People's Brigade are: 1, free movement of capital through transnational companies under the international finance capital's oligarchy. Second, more the investment, less is the employment per investment. And this is globally equal in all the countries in facts and figures. More the investment, less is the employment per investment. So this is a parameter you can define as the organic composition of capital that is globalized now. And through this phenomenon that more the investment, less is the employment per investment, 2 important properties we can see. One is the emergence of informal sectors, because less the investment, more at the employment, so more employments are in the informal sectors. Secondly, the emergence of laborer agencies. This is a very new and most important feature of this era of capitalism. We all know how once Marx explained actually in the 2nd and 3rd volume of Capital, how productive capital was divided into product capital and trade capital, then trade capital and finance capital like bank capital, then industrial capital and trade and banking capital, they merged together to develop finance capital, that was shown by Lenin. Now the variable capital, that is another sector. So that is the laborer agencies. Now ILO is being compelled to recognize this emergence of laborer agencies. These are very important today. Third point is surplus transfer. The transfer of surplus values from smaller to larger sectors and from smaller currency regions to larger currency regions. And one important feature that has manifested through this, that is capital import by imperialist nations. We all know that at Lenin's time, Lenin explained imperialism by a key feature that was capital export by the imperialist nations. But now capital import is also very significant along with the capital export. So that is a new feature. And as I have said, the central tendency of this neoliberalism is to produce, that is the temporal mode of production. We define the temporal mode of production by the central tendency toward producing expensive but less durable commodities in smaller numbers, in relatively smaller numbers. I will explain this in a brief manner. And the point 5 is the central tendency in stock market, that is derivative trading. We all know about it now. I'm not going to this in detail. Rather, coming to this, before I explain briefly the temporal mode of production, let me tell you about two quotes from Communist Manifesto. How Marx and Engels defined the bourgeois mode of production at that time with a very simple, empirical view. That is the cheap prices of commodities, huge numbers of cheap commodities. That batters down all Chinese wall, they said in Communist Manifesto. And that had led to the epidemic of overproduction. Because so many productions, but people did not have that much of purchasing power. So that was the empirical view, that was the manifestation of prices, although the origin of prices was a different point, that was in the production scale, but in the trading scale, this was the manifestation of that crisis, the overproduction due to huge numbers of commodities, although these cheap commodities, through these cheap commodities, actually the capitalist nations batters down all the Chinese walls of all the countries. They got their global market through their cheaper commodities. So we term this mode of production as the ensemble mode of production, and the overproduction as the ensemble overproduction. But now, what we are seeing, this is what we term as the temporal mode of production, the central tendency towards producing costly but less lasting commodities, comparatively smaller numbers, but with newer applicative quality again and again. So you have to purchase new updated commodities continuously. So the entire consumables are like use and throw mode. And they will give you continuously newer updated versions of the products. Some may differ to the point that the commodities are really expensive. But in fact, if you look at the most heavily profited companies, like 10 or 20 or 50 topmost companies of the world, you can see they are investing on expensive and luxury commodities. And all those commodities are continuously updated and upgraded each year or twice a year or thrice a year. The basic idea is, I can explain with a very simple example. Like suppose I have $1,000 that I'm investing on production. So suppose I'm producing a commodity of 50 rupees. So I'm producing 20 commodities, each rupees 50, because I have $1,000 to invest. Now, there may be 15 people, those who have that purchasing power, and 5 people, those who actually do not have that purchasing power to buy that $50 commodities. On the other hand, if I produce two commodities, $500 each, and if only 4 people are there who can purchase these commodities, then I'm assured that I'll not suffer by overproduction. So that is the basic idea from the individual capitalist, because already there were this much of consumer class who can buy these expensive commodities. So before neoliberalism came, we had already a society where a growing consumer class of these expensive commodities. So that has been addressed properly by the neoliberal capitalism. I'm not going to give the detailed idea of it. I'm just galloping these things and coming to the central point that I'm going to focus in this presentation. Raj, can you tell me how much time do I have? You are muted.
Sorry. Yeah, you have 20 minutes. And if you need another 5 minutes, that's okay.
Okay, thank you. So the new class correlation, this is based on this heavily expensive commodities for which the state is actually, the so-called state is withdrawing or retrieving from its welfare economy. In fact, when the state had many commodities which are cheaper, then they actually needed Keynesian model that you give people low amount of wage but give many employment so that they can purchase those cheap commodities. But now, since we have expensive commodities at the center, it is not that the cheaper commodities have abolished, no, but at the central tendency, the expensive commodities are there. So state is rather giving employment to very fewer with very high salary. So that has changed the new class correlation. And what about the economic mode of this class correlation? Does it have a Marxist interpretation? Can we explain this on the basis of Marxism? So that is my proposition. So to explain that, first let me tell you that in our society, whatever the tendencies, if I have a distribution of the economy or even the social trends, will have a central tendency like a Gaussian wave, a central tendency, and there are like lower peripheries, right? But in any society, you can see that there are two types of, the central tendency is like at the present, but there are two other peripheries. One is a larger periphery that is actually carrying the reminiscence of the previous society a little. And another is a marginal periphery that will give you the clue for the future, where we are going. So in any society, you can see these two peripheral tendencies along with the central tendency. So now I'm going to explain Marx's Capital in a very brief line, in a historic manner. In the middle, I'm showing the central tendency of the society in capitalist society, the larger periphery, and the marginal periphery. We can see, suppose before the era of commodities, there was no actually any specific exchange relation. That was very random, right? So at that time, even at the marginal part, the foreign traders, they first started exchange in a proper manner. So C to C prime, that was actually introduced by the foreign traders. but they were the marginal part of the economy. Later, that had become the central tendency of the economy, that is C to C primed. So I can you see the cursor? So I'm showing this C to C prime that had come to the central point, but this is pre-capitalist commodity relation. That is pre-capitalist commodity relation, C to C prime. And at that time, in the larger periphery, in fact, there was no specific exchange relation. Like many people used to just randomly exchange their relations. But the central tendency was becoming C to C prime. The main producers were started exchanging commodities in a, as explained by Marx, with the labor values. Right at that time, foreign traders first introduced money in trading. Again, the foreign traders at the marginal periphery, they started exchanging commodities through money. That was described by Marx in a article on money that was not given in Capital, that was referred in Capital, if you see. And a very rich analysis has been done in that article on money. Later, even in the pre-capitalist commodity exchange, money has entered the society. So C to M to C prime. Right at that time, at the larger periphery, there was a little C to C prime and also no specific exchange relation. Like, in fact, even today, if I suppose I'm inviting you to a dinner, I'm not expecting that you will also invite me to a dinner. So we do not have actually that equal exchange relationship, right? So even still today, we have this no specific exchange relation in our system. So that is actually existing still. So that is the most primitive relation that we have in our society. We still have it. But again, in the foreign traders, in the case of foreign traders, they started first M to C to M plus delta M, like to purchase commodities in lesser money and to sell them in higher monies, but not in the sense of the capitalist exploitation. That was a complete different thing that came later. When M to C to M plus delta M, that came with the real industrialization, where actually what the great discovery of Marx, that the workers are not selling their labor, but their labor power to the capitalist owner. And that is creating the surplus value. So M to C to M plus delta M. But even at that time, in the periphery, there was C to M to C prime and C to C prime that was going on. And at that time, first, the foreign traders at the marginal periphery, again, they are giving the clue of your future. They first started profit rate equalization. It later came to the center of capitalism when the capitalist owners, they started a thought of profit rate equalization through the Marx's great theory, the great theory by Marx, value to price transformation theory, which has been actually discarded by many Marxists. I'm not going to that in detail, but in fact, Borsky first proposed some contradiction in this theory, and Paul Sweezy, Paul Baran, they have given a hike to that. But I do not at all feel they were even being a minimum of logical, whatever it is. But this important thing is that this value to price transformation thing, the capitalist owners went to profit equalization thing. So I'm not describing this. I'm just giving a brief discussion on this. because this is very important for our understanding. Suppose two capitalist owners, two industries, like you can see in the slide, industry 1 and industry 2. Suppose the constant capital for both the industries, the total investment is $100 million. Now, industry 1 is investing in constant capital 80 million and in variable capital 20 million. And for industry 2, it is 60 million and 40 million. Now, since the rate of surplus is same for all the industries, otherwise laborers will go from one industry to other. Like if somewhere the rate of surplus is lower, laborer will go there. So there will be an equality in the rate of surplus. So suppose the rate of surplus here is 100%. Then in the industry 1, there will be surplus of $20 million. That means the value of the product will be $120 million. Similarly, in the industry 2, the surplus value will be $40 million. So value will be $140 million. So the profit rate would be in industry 1 would be 20% and industry 2 would be 40%. So that cannot be accepted by the capitalists. From this, actually, there came the profit rate equalization through value to price transformation. Now, they will not sell their commodities in values, but in prices. That is on the basis of return on investment. So how much return on how much investment? So if both of them has invested $100 million, both of them will get 30% each profit. So that is the rate of profit equalization. And for that, you can see that industry 1 is selling its commodities in price which is more than its value. And industry 2, it is selling its commodity in prices that is lower than its value. So that is the value to price transformation. Now what happened through the development of capitalism? This was shown by Marx. At that time, even when Marx was showing for, you can see, when it was M to C to M plus delta M for the capitalist owner, for laborer, it was C to M to C prime, because he was just selling his commodity, that is labor power. He's getting the wage, and he was purchasing the basic consumables. So it was C to M to C prime for him, for laborer. Similarly, Marx showed when M to C to M plus delta M and added to it value to price transformation, the laborer was exhibiting the same thing, C to M to C prime. But now, with the specialization of labor power, that is the development of skilled labor, the technocracy, the technology, whatever it is, now the variable capital is another very separated capital. And now the variable capital is also exhibiting the same feature. It is trying to see value to price transformation. So it is also want to get its return on investment. So investment on what? Investment on development, its skill, whatever skill it is. I don't know whether we should call it skill or not, but if we have invested money or time, in terms of money or time, some investment on developing skill to get the position of a laborer, then I'd expect the corresponding return. So it is the same concept with which now the wages and salaries are determined. So we now have 3 kinds of laborers' wage. For one, their price, the price of their labor power is actually less than their value of the labor power. They are actually the so-called unorganized informal sectors and so-called unskilled workers. They are not actually unskilled. Suppose a person is plucking tea leaf. He or she actually needs very definite skill for that. So it is not a question of skill. It is the question of investing on that, on investing to develop that skill. So on that, its price is much less than its value because the investment is low to develop that skill. Second is price is almost equal to value. And the third is price is much greater than its value. So now we can say that workers are of three kinds, in fact. One is excess surplus creating, one is for which price and value are equal. They are creating surplus just as Marx described. So they are surplus creating workers. But another part you can see on the left side, price is less than the value. So excess surplus creating laborers, they are excess surplus creating workers. And the right side, the price is greater than the value. So the surplus consuming workers, they are getting their part of salary from the excess of those who are actually underpaid. The point is, most of the communist parties worldwide now, in fact, in 30 years back, if you see, these workers, now those who are surplus consuming workers, they were actually surplus creating workers. But now they are surplus consuming workers. So they are actually benefited from the neoliberal economy. And that is why these communist parties are also benefited from neoliberal economy. So they are in favor partly of liberal economy. They are only concerned about like their jobs will lost and like that. But in general, they have no contradiction in that sense. They have no opposition in that sense to the liberal economy, the present liberal economy. The second point is for the emerged self-employed and small peasants. For self-employed or small peasants, we can see that they are actually not selling their labor power to any capitalist owners. They actually sell their commodities directly to the consumers. So they are actually selling their labor. Then are they exploited? In the old Marxist school of thought, they were actually in the C to C prime, C to M to C prime model. But now they are also taking the same philosophy of return on investment. So now what has happened? Suppose a self-employed who is investing $100 on the raw materials and means of production, and value of his own labor is $40. So it is $140. The value of his commodity is $140. In that case, there would be no surplus value. But in price terms, since he or she is not selling his product with the philosophy of laborer, with the philosophy of a capitalist, that is in terms of price, it is the C. C is the investment. And this F% of that C, that is the profit percent of the investment. So that is M. Suppose he is investing $100 on the raw materials, and 10% profit rate is you can see in the market. So then price of his commodity will be only $110. So now actually the value he or she is producing is $140, but he is selling it at $110. So actually he or she is creating $30 surplus to the society, to the capitalist society, through the consumers who are purchasing from them, and they are also purchasing from those who are selling their products at higher prices than their values. So actually this surplus is transferring from them to the capitalist owners through the consumers. This is a very complex network of chain. So this is the new class correlation, that we have different kinds of proletarian class In fact, for self-employed, if they would take the interesting thing is, if they would take the philosophy of laborers, they would not be proletarian, they would not be exploited, they would not create surplus. They are taking the philosophy of bourgeois and they are creating surplus. They are getting proletariat. Or we can say them semi-proletariat. So this is the new situation that has emerged. I don't know whether I have enough time to explain the next thing. Please, Raj, help me out.
Yeah, we can give you extra time. So how about 6 minutes for it?
Okay. So one part I have completed, that the new class correlation, and now the new age crisis, that is the crisis of financial capital. So the finance capital crisis. For that, I have to explain how money is being made of money. So money is making more money. How this is going on? So money is making more money through the investment on prediction that you all know. I'm just giving an example. I'm just asking you to look at this picture. Just selectively go through it. First, consider P1. This is a capitalist producer. Okay, this is a capitalist producer. He has projected to produce, suppose $100 million in $100 million production in 6 months. His investment is $80 million and expected profit is $20 million. Okay, but suppose he is sometimes at some later time he is expecting a $30 million risk of overproduction. You can see my cursor, I think. So this red box, risk of $30 million overproduction. At this point, he can make a contract with a financer. This is financer A. He can make a contract with this financer. Suppose the contract of a $90 million. So he is actually selling the risk of $30 million. Because if he sells his product in $90 million, still he will get a $10 million profit in that case. But if he does not sell this contract, then he may lose, suppose $10 million. Okay. Now, this financer, he is thinking that he will make it so that he will sell it entirely. So he is making this contract out of nothing. Production is not there. He is making a contract that after 6 months, I will sell the entire copyright of your products, the $100 million products, and I will give you $90 million for it. That's it. That is the contract. Now, suppose after some time, he is also expecting that it will not work. Now, another speculator, this is S1, he is contracting with him. He is selling this contract paper to him, suppose only in $5 million. So still $90 million plus $5 million, it is less than $100 million. So he is selling the contract paper in $5 million. The speculator one, he is thinking that he will make it. He will sell the entire product in 6 months, $100 million. So he is purchasing the contract paper. He is giving $5 million to financer A. Okay. And he is giving this $5 million. He is getting this contract paper. He is giving this $5 million by taking loan from another bank B. Okay. So suppose this has happened. Now, the similar things have happened with this producer P2, financer B, and speculator 2. producer P2, he has sold a similar contract to financier B, and financier B has sold this contract paper in $5 million to speculator 2. I'm not considering any interest rate on these contract papers and other complex things. I'm just making it simple. So now you can see, since the bank B, firstly, producer P1 and producer P2 are completely out of this sector. Okay. Now, the bank B, it has given a loan of $5 million. So it has an equity of $5 million, right? Now, speculator S1, it has given $5 million. It has a contract paper of the same amount, $5 million. So it has a contract paper that has a price of $5 million, and it has a loan of $5 million. So its equity is 0, right? The speculator S1 has equity 0. Now, financier A, suppose this speculator 2 has taken the loan from financier A, so that the financier A, he has got $5 million against his contract paper, and now he has given loan to speculator 2, so he has also $5 million equity. Similarly, S2, the speculator 2, has no equity because he has sold, he has given this $5 million to financier B, and he has a loan of $5 million. So he has a 0 equity. Financier B, he has an equity of $5 million because he has really got that money, right? So now, if you see the total equity of all these individuals, bank B, $5 million, speculator S1, 0, financier A, $5 million, speculator 2, 0, financier B, $5 million. So it is 555, it is $15 million equity. Total equity is $15 million. But what actually happened, if you see, $5 million has been channelized from B to S1, from S1 to FA, from FA to S2, then S2 to FB. So it is the only $5 million that has been channelized, but it has created $15 million of assets. Now, when the maturity date will come, everything will collapse. It has to be collapsed. So that is the origin of this financial crisis. It is a bubbling of the entire thing. But why this bubbling? Because the temporal mode of production, people are producing newer and newer commodities. So there is always an expectation of more production in future time. So that is the origin of this future plays. So now we can say it is actually not M to M plus delta M. It is actually M at time t to M plus delta M at time t. But in between, there is a commodity for a later time. You can see these producers, P1 and P2, they will produce at some later time. They have claimed to produce at some later time. But we are making profit at present on the basis of that future production. So it is basically M at t to C at t plus delta t, some later time, to M plus delta M at the current time. So I will end with this. In the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels said, in bourgeois society, living labor is but a means to increase accumulated labor. Therefore, the past dominates the present. It was their final words about capitalism. The past dominates the present. But now we can say the past is dominating not only the present, but also the future. And this is the origin of New Age fascism. And you can see this producer, financer, and speculator don't think that they are different capitalists always. They can be same capitalist owners. So this is quite different from the old age fascism, where there were two groups, fascist groups and liberal groups. According to Dimitrov thesis, fascism was the power of the finance capital. It is nothing else. It was the power of the finance capital. And at that time, finance capital and productive capital, they had a contradiction. They were different groups. So there was different capitalist groups like liberals, there are different capitalist groups like financiers, finance capitalists, fascists. Now, you can see, suppose, for example, Elon Musk, he is producing the AI cars like Tesla. At the same time, he is financing space tourism, that is like a financer like this FA type financer. And he is also investing on Bitcoins like a speculator. So at the same time, he is P, he is F, and he is S. So we should not think like there are two different groups like fascist and liberals. Now fascist and liberals are actually messed up. So with that, we can actually conclude with this. I'm just showing, I will take just 1 minute, Raj, to show this graph.
Yeah.
This is the actual data that I'm showing. This is stocks traded as a percentage of GDP. It is about the entire world, throughout the entire world, not in any particular country. It is the total world GDP and the total stocks traded throughout the world. Stocks traded as a percentage of GDP, you can see two lines, one dotted line and one continuous line. The dotted line is showing the baseline, that is continuously increasing the stocks traded, and that is reaching 100% of the GDP. That means the real production and the stocks traded, that is the virtual production, as I have described just earlier, they are almost getting equal in amount, and sometimes they are overshooting the GDP. In 1990, 92, you all can see a peak, right? And similar peak you can see in 2000, and similar at 2008, in 2016. So you can see in 1992 it was happened due to Japan asset bubble collapse. Then in 2000 it was due to the dot-com collapse at USA. Then in 2008 we all know subprime crisis, so the mortgage crisis. In 2016 it was USA and China currency crisis. So it is almost exhibiting a 8 to 9 year cycle, so that the stocks traded are overshooting the GDP, that is more than 100% of the GDP. And just after that, it is collapsing, right? So these two trends, one is continuously increasing stocks traded toward GDP, and other is cyclic overshooting of the GDP. We are expecting in 2024 and 25, within this period, we will possibly see another overshooting, that is the cyclic crisis. We are expecting to see it. So with that, I'm concluding. The future is either socialist revolution or civil war to fascist wars. Thank you everyone.
Thank you. So you can end this thing, sharing of screen, so we can see you, and then we will make some announcements. And thank you very much. A lot of material there for us to digest, and but a lot of people here are very knowledgeable Marxists, so I expect to have very interesting discussion also about your activism. So with that, we go into future programs. Alan or Jean, do you want to talk about the upcoming program? I can tell you that next week is going to be Grover Furr, next Sunday. He's going to speak on Robeson and Stalin era USSR, history of the Stalin era USSR and Robeson. And following that, Alan or Jean, could you please come in and announce what's happening after that?
Okay, this is Gene.
Okay.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks so much for that talk. I still am trying to digest it. Very complicated and very sophisticated. And I just want to congratulate you for that. Very good piece of work, and it'll take time to digest it. But and we don't have that much time because we're always moving forward with a new topic every week. And next week, as Raj pointed out, we have our friend Grover Furr speaking on Paul Robeson's Stalin and the History of the Soviet Union, which we're all looking forward to. On April 7th, we do not have a speaker yet, but we're exploring various alternatives and we're looking forward to that. April 14th, we had Dan Kovalek speaking on the current situation in Russia. And actually, Dan was in Moscow when for the elections. And so he's been very active there and will give us an up-to-date picture of that. We put that latest blurb of that we just got from, I think Roger sent it out, but we'll put that on our website and on our regular weekly reminder. And after that, we're open, but we have a couple of things on the coming down that we still need to schedule. One, Ann Garrison, very knowledgeable with the Black Agenda report, will speak on the Rwanda genocide, and another one on Andrew Feinstein speaking on fighting Israeli apartheid, lessons from South Africa. So we have we're going to be covering a number of very interesting and worthwhile things next week. And again, just remind you, if you don't receive our email reminders every week, you send out the reminders with the login information, and you can sign up for those at our website, ICSSmarks.org, which is back online. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jean. So we go into question and comment period now. The set of rules are these. People, go ahead, raise your hands by clicking in the reactions button. If you raise your hands, I'll be able to see it, and then we will have responses. A person who's asking a question or making a comment has up to 2 minutes, and please try to stick to that. And then followed by, we'll ask Basudev to respond. If it's just a comment, then it is his choice whether he wants to respond or not. If it's a question, please respond. And then, so we take one question at a time or one comment at a time. As of now, I don't see, and we want it to be respectful interaction here. And so please maintain the discipline, which our group has been very good at, but we want to maintain it. So I've got 2 hands raised right now. First one is Alan, and second one is Mario. So Alan, please go ahead.
Hi, Basudev. Thank you for your presentation. I think the strength of your presentation is the scope of what you're trying to analyze and really trying to apply Marxism to understand what's going on in the world today, rather than starting from formulas and old ideas, really try to analyze what's going on in our historical period. So really appreciate that. I actually have two question. Well, let me start with one question. The People's Brigade also has a great practice in your area in terms of worker struggle. And if you could just say a few words about the type of struggle, and if you could link it to some of the ideas in your presentation. I know that could be another hour presentation, but if you could just say a few words to try to link it back to some of the theoretical issues that you're grappling with. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. I really appreciate your comment, and in fact, yes, we are organizing our struggle on the basis of this theory. So, firstly, as we have identified the change in class correlation, like, for example, as Raj first explained, that the biggest communist party in India, that is now almost getting obsolete, and it is just rooted out from West Bengal, where it was based upon. But now we are, you can see, we have actually getting a huge response from people. We are organizing them. We have started from a very fundamental concept that the class correlation has changed. So what the CPIM, that is the Communist Party of India Marxist here, basically they are based upon the organized workers, those who are getting much higher salaries or wages in India. For example, in Indian money, they are getting 60,000 to 80,000 or 1 lakhs of rupees per month. So that is a very large amount of money in terms of wage for workers in India. There are significantly huge amounts, huge numbers of people, those who are working, they have wages only 3,000 to 5,000 rupees per month. So we have first targeted them. And what CPIM, like all other communist parties here, they have got alliance with the Congress party here, which is the National Bourgeois Party of India, one of the most old National Bourgeois Party of India. They have got an alliance with that party because they are actually in alliance with the neoliberal economy. In fact, in last decade of the CPIM, that is Communist Party rule in West Bengal, they had implemented many policies of neoliberalism very directly. Okay, they have made special economic zones. They have discarded the labor laws. They did everything. So why they could do? Because they were based upon the most most secured part of the working class and those who are actually benefited from the neoliberalism. We are based upon, we have started working with the basic proletarian class, that and we went to the rural areas of Bengal. We organized their people, and most importantly, we have focused on women workers here. That is one we have done because we have studied in case of India. In fact, in the last 20 years of neoliberalism, the labor force participation rate from women, from female, that has dropped significantly. In fact, in all the countries, even you can see in US, you can see in Europe, you can see in China, the male labor force participation is much higher than women labor force participation. But it is actually in a heavy contrast in India. Like male labor force participation rate is 70% and female labor force participation rate is only 20%. So we have first focused on that part because neoliberalism has dropped that down. So we started from there and we are getting very significant responses. We have organized serious movements in different districts and in Kolkata. So, and in this way, we are getting actually huge support from people.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize for limiting you today. We should have had 4-hour-long session, but we are restricted to 2-hour session and with a kind of a rigid division between the two. So you can also, during this time, expand upon some of your concept if there are not enough questions. So you can take your time and add material to it. So next person in line is Mario, and followed by Mario is me. So Mario, please go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I really appreciate the analysis. A couple questions and a comment. In terms of your methodology, reaching out to women, I really appreciate that. In terms of India's regional particularities in relationship to the equator and the effects of global warming, it's really horrible how India is shouldering most of the effects of international speculative capital in its labor and shouldering the brunt of not only exploitation, but of course, ecologically as well. I worked most of my time in one of the largest technology, most of my career in one of the largest technology internet companies in Silicon Valley area, in the Bay Area near San Francisco. And it was like working in a big city. We had robots going up and down the aisles delivering mail. We had our own, or I shouldn't say we, but the company had a store, its own store. It had, hundreds of cubicles up and down aisles in different directions. And then what happened is a lot of the workers were unionized, but then a lot of Indian and other Asian workers came in, and of course they were expected to undermine the union. Well, of course, the American Union, they didn't extend their hands in solidarity with the international workers, who were, very kind, knowledgeable people. But what ended up happening, of course, is that the union workers ended up losing their jobs. They were being told to train, in large respects, train the newer workers, and it was quite a sight. So my question so my two questions is involved with the effects of the environment. And then my second question is a little bit more tangential, but hopefully you'll have something to say about it. And that's the new movie that came out based on a book by Isabel Wilkerson, called, and if you haven't seen it, it's okay, but it's very interesting anyways. It's called Origin, based on a book called Caste, that kind of makes connections on the caste system that exists, or that still exists, of course, as you know, and the rise of capitalism. It doesn't speak to capitalism, but it speaks to global discrimination and that, and oppression. If you've heard of it, I'd like to hear a comment. So, but I really appreciate your analysis. I'd like also in how, based on my history, how can we unite here with your struggles there. I think like there used to be RIM, the Revolutionary International Movement, where Indian Marxists were a large part of that. And it seems like that's kind of a bit fallen apart for some reason. If you have any analysis on that, I know a lot of great analysis have come out of Indian. So thank you from India. So thank you so much for your continued work.
Thank you, Mario.
Basudev, your response, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mario. I'm sorry. Firstly, you have said that you have been working in the silicon technology, so you are actually at the core of neoliberal capitalism, I'd say, because I must say this is the silicon age of capitalism. In fact, whatever neoliberalism could do on the basis of silicon age, because of that primary transistor, and then using it for this entire communication channel. Now it is the age of information, and this digital world is based upon that Silicon Valley, and we are still so much dependent. The entire world capitalism is so much dependent on silicon. We can never ignore that part. As far I could understand, your first question was about ecology. So whether our analysis have anything to do with the ecology and environmental condition of world, if I'm not wrong. So the point is, yes, capitalism was, we all know how it was just destroying the resources with its heavy amount of productions. But importantly, with this temporal mode of production, one part is they are producing this use and throw types of production. So they're producing much more in lesser time. So actually they're exploiting, they're appropriating or expropriating the resources, the environmental resources with heavy speed. And added to that, one important, very important part is that since these are use and throw products, after usage, these thrown out products are being thrown to the dumps. Like there are huge amounts of cars you can see in the sea banks. So in fact, now we have two problems together. One is the scarcity of resources. One is the lack of resources. Another is we cannot drain them out properly because of this temporal mode of production. So that is an added factor. With the source, now we have a drain problem also. So this is the key feature, we can say, that an extra pressure on this economy. And that is why now we have other sectors for waste management. And on this waste management, now the capitalist groups are fighting with themselves. How they will manage these wastes, where they will throw them out. So it is not only like in Lenin's era, it was only the fight was predominantly due to capital export. Where they will export the capital, which financial colony they will export their capital. But now, where they will export their wastes, where they will take their raw materials from, where they will throw their wastes. All these are now added to the contradiction. So that is the most important part that is added with this temporal mode of production that I think. This is one part. Other part, I'm not very clear. Was Mario asking for to connect the casteism with this?
Yeah.
It's not very clear to me.
Okay. Yeah, if I can elaborate if Raj wants to. Perhaps he knows more about
I
about
think
it than
let's,
I do.
if you can quickly do that, that'll be fine. Otherwise, you can come back second time with this question. Mari, why did you think about it? And let's come back in the second round while I have some others. So if you're ready to formulate your question now, it's fine. Otherwise, you take your time. Which would you prefer, Mario?
Okay, first I just want to really appreciate your response on speculating on waste management. I mean, that's just like, that's horrible. It should just be, you know, a socialist endeavor, especially now. But in terms of cats are concerned, I may need to ponder it a bit more, because I'm just trying to get, I'll ponder it more. Thanks.
Okay, very good. So there are 4 people in line now. Myself, I'm the first in line. After that, Jean, then Richard Wright, and then Norma Harrison. So I'll go. It'll help also clarify your talk a little bit. So you have said now in the temporal mode of production, costly but less lasting commodities are being produced. Now, this is different than what Marx called luxury production, I think. So clarify, because luxury production was consumed previously only by the capitalist class. But now there is an association of working class with the capitalist class, this kind of thing going on. So that's first question. Would you call that luxury production, and how do you connect with Marx's division of production into necessary labor production, subsistence versus luxury? And then the other thing is about this mode of production, I think, is coming because there's this tremendous gap now developing between the well-off workers, which you already point out, and those who can barely afford to live. That's true in the United States. It's a phenomena that has developed during the last 50 years that I've been here, since 66, actually coming up to 60 years. Now 50% of the United States, lower 50% of the people are barely able to survive. You know, they are not able to survive actually. They either have to decide to pay rent or buy medicine or buy food. I mean, these are, and there's crimes increasing in all areas because people have no way of making a living. So there's a whole new phenomena that's going on, which you used to see in India when I left India, but now this is coming here. So also on the self-employed people, Marx had a category of people who are piece workers. So if you can comment on that a little bit, because piece worker was, you know, one who supposedly worked for himself, but really was part of the capitalist system. He just worked in his own space. And a lot of people today are working from home using internet. So the cost of space goes down, you know, because they don't have to pay for that. So I'm sorry for asking too many questions, but if you want to ignore some, go ahead. But those are my questions for you. Thank you.
Yep. Your last question is about the piece workers. So basically, at that time, what Marx showed, because those workers were outside the capitalist economic structure. But now what we are showing that these self-employed persons, these peasants, since they are connected to the same money system, same money chain, since the economy is running through the same money chain, that money is sometimes the means of selling your production. Sometimes it is selling your labor power. Sometimes it is the amount of wealth. Sometimes it is capital. So it is all these different natures with the same money. Now, under this system of capitalism, in fact, this all the self, not only like those who are working from home for some company, they are actually working class. They are selling their labor powers. So if they are getting lower wages, that means they are exploited. They are classical proletarian class. I have no comment on that. But there are other different types of self-dependent, self-employed persons who are selling their products through contracts. Like they are taking contracts from some company and they are selling their products. So what about them? They are also actually selling their products. What I have shown, that they're not selling their products on their values, rather on their prices. So that means they are not considering their own labor value. They're considering how much they have invested and considering the rate of profit that is going on in the market. So they're adding that part of with their basic investment. And in that way, in most of the cases, their price of their products are less than the value they are producing. And in that way, they are actually being exploited by capitalism. So they are actually taking the philosophy of capitalists and they're becoming proletarian because they are creating surplus for capitalism. So that is a very new thing that is happening. And about luxury product, in fact, at that time, Marx divided different consumables in Capital. The second volume of Capital, he showed how different consumables. One part is means of next productions, one is for luxury consumables for the capitalist class, and the other consumables for the working class. But the center of the economy, the core of the economy, was based on the consumables for the working class. That is the large number of people, the huge commodity. Currently, still we have luxury products. Those are super luxury products. Those are used by the very rich capitalists like Elon Musk or Zuckerberg or Ambani or Adani in our country. So in fact, sometimes Ambani uses much luxury consumable than Zuckerberg. So whatever it is, the point is, but that is not the center of the economy. The center of the economy itself is producing expensive commodities for a growing class of growing working class, those who can expend more on consumables. So the neoliberal economy, this temporal mode, these expensive commodities are based on them. Those who can afford a good car, a good house, and similar other things. Those who can go to luxury restaurant every weekend. So these are the growing working class. And along with them, there is a very large growing class. Those are actually below the poverty line. So that contrast is very, it has got very much hype this time.
Okay, thank you. So Jean is next, followed by Richard Wright and then Norma Harrison. And then we have two more people after that, Mehmet and Anne. So Jean, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, again, thanks so much. And as officially an old person, I really appreciate youth coming up and speaking to us and doing such a good job. And I have to confess, it takes me a while to catch up, and I'm going to have to watch this to fully understand this. But I want to take a little bit of a lighthearted approach. And I don't know if people know who Jesse Jackson is. He was with Martin Luther King when King was assassinated, and he ran for president himself. And I worked on his campaign, I remember. But I remember one speech he gave where he talked about neoliberalism. And what he said is neoliberalism used to be called Reaganomics in honor of our 40th president. And he said, according to Reaganomics, the problem is rich people don't have enough money. He says, according to Reaganomics, the problem is poor people got too much money. So once you understand the problem, the solution is simple. You take from the poor and you give to the rich. And that's known as robbing the hood. But that's what Jesse Jackson said about that. And I just want to wonder if you have any comments on this little approach. Again, thank you for your talk.
Go ahead if you want to respond. Basudev?
Well, yeah, this Reaganomics is a very highlighted one. We all know that. But it is what we are showing, that it is not only just a policy to extract some more from poor and give to the rich. It is not like that. In fact, if you see from post-Leninist era, actually, in fact, Soviet Union has a very important contribution to this emergence of neoliberalism, because they have led to the thing that workers now, they were growing. Workers were having more purchasing power due to Soviet Union. So socialist era actually brought to us the thing that workers can have more, more salary, more benefits. So this was growing. And at the same time, capitalism was suffering its continuous crisis. As Lenin perfectly pointed out, that this imperialist era is, it will exhibit continuous crisis of capitalism. So it is the era of crisis of capitalism, and it is the era of revolutions. So they transformed, they mutated in a form that they can use this, this growing purchasing power of the working class, a section of the working class. So through this, it has come up, and it was started from a very fundamental thing, that is, I have shown that it started through the fall of Bretton Woods system. Because in any one country, the so-called elite working class is of limited amount, limited numbers. But if we consider the entire world, then that is a huge market. So they started with removing the gold standard for foreign trade. They are removing all the barriers on foreign trade. They made it a consensus, which we call TINA consensus. There is no other alternative. So with that, they have started. Although they have the power like dollar, although gold standard was removed, now every currency has, in common sense, it is, conventionally, they all have equal rights, but actually this dollar, euro, pound, yen, they have much more power, and they have special drawing rights at the IMF. So with that, they can dominate the world through their foreign trading itself. I have not shown those part today in my presentation. So actually, this is not like just a policy regime that you are taking much more from the poorer people and giving it to the rich. No, it is a set of economy that has emerged from the previous one. It is not a choice. It was an evident and obvious outcome of the previous society. So that, I must say, this is historical materialism has led us to this neoliberalism. It was not by any choice of capitalist classes. It was their destiny.
Okay,
So
thank
that
you.
is my point.
Thank you. Richard Wright is next, followed by Norma, followed by Mehmet and Anne Lewis, and then Dave Danois. So Richard, please go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Basudev for joining us today. A quick aside to Gene. Way back when I was on Jackson's campaign staff for Texas, and then I can't remember the order, but I was also a precinct organizer. And a lot of people don't know this, but Jackson actually, one of them at least, took Texas back. Anyways, I had a lot of problems with your theoretical presentation. I'm not going to go into that a whole lot. You happen to hit sort of a wheelhouse in that my friend Nan and I have been exchanging views on Varoufakis over the last couple of weeks. And I found a pretty good analysis of his thoughts. What is it? I forget. It's on his book, Techno, whatever the hell it is. I posted it in the chat. I would encourage you to read it because I think it actually hits a lot of points on Mark. Secondly, lately I came across one of the notebooks from the Tricontinental Institute, and they do a very good analysis. I've only gone through it once. I need to go back through it again, but they do a very good analysis on analyzing the crises of capitalism. And I would urge you very strongly to read that. Once again, I posted in the chat. I need to go back through it again myself. The question I wanted to bring up is
quickly, please. Yeah, we have many people waiting.
Yeah, I know. The question I appreciate. The question I wanted to get to was this: what is your party's policy on relations with China and Pakistan? And I'll shut up with that. Thank you.
Okay, so your question is our party's analysis on China. Is it?
What's your relationship, your
What-
party's relationship with Chinese Communist Party and your view on China?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Currently, we do not have any relationship with the Communist Party of China. And our analysis on their policies is that it is nothing much different from neoliberalism. The basic difference is that the amount of their economy is very big, and they have a number of state-controlled enterprises, state-controlled industries. The key industries all are state-controlled, but that does not prevent them to follow neoliberalism. It is not true that if some key industries are belonging to the state, they are state controlled, that means they are going towards socialism. We do not think so. In fact, in India, during Indira Gandhi government in 1970s, it's actually Indian National Congress, the key bourgeois party of India, they actually state-owned all the key industries. In fact, still the Indian banks are state-owned. They're public banks. And with those public banks, you can see very recently, since we are now going through the general election of India, the parliamentary election of India, very recently, you possibly have come to know that there is a huge electoral bond scam through these public banks. Electoral bond scam means the public banks, they have sold electoral bonds to the corporates in the name of some parties, and those bonds are amounting. The amount of those bonds those are sold to like the parties like Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, or Indian National Congress, or Trinamool Congress. The amount of those bonds are sometimes more than the turnover of the companies. So again, we can see the same financial overshooting. So it is the same trend that we are seeing even in the electoral case in India, and those are actually performed, those are executed by public banks, the state-owned banks. So that means you if you have state-controlled things, that does not mean you are running socialism. And in fact, many economic parameters I have not been able to show in this presentation, those are actually very much similar, almost similar to all the capitalist countries in China.
Okay, so Norma Harrison is next, followed by Anne Lewis and then Dave Dhanwar. And I think we're going to run out with time after these three people. So Norma, please keep your comment or question very brief.
Oh, yes, I will. Thank you very much for reminding me. Thank you. I'm very pleased with your additional analysis to what the heck is going on. Basudev, that's the name I see posted. Thank you. It's very difficult for me to understand it. The accent and my hearing don't go together. But I've earned that through lasting this long. I keep going.
At least I'm getting a frozen picture of Norma.
What? About 15 years ago, we were told that we had to conserve electricity. Do you remember that? I mean, whenever that was, we in the capitalist world, in the rich imperialist world. And immediately, I think the next day I looked over, I live in the East San Francisco Bay. All the buildings in San Francisco were lighted up. I was thinking it's inexplicable, but there's obviously some basic error in the human construct. Now we have the age of the computer chip, and it is tearing up Earth even further than it's been torn up. It is raping Earth of scarce minerals, so that this can only go on so long, That's it.
Okay. So Basudev, you want to respond to that?
I mean, I think Norma, thank you, Norma. And really, technology is something, in fact, that is the key to capitalist mutations. In fact, that was told by Marx in Capital, that without revolutionizing the production relation, capitalism cannot last. So they have chosen the path to use technology, and I'm not very clear. Is there any question by Norma? Raj, can you help me?
No, she was just making comment.
Okay. So
yeah,
yes,
I didn't want to make you feel obligated to go into it. It's just the observation.
Okay.
Scarce minerals, part of the rape of Earth. The rape of Earth has brought us to this place. And anytime anybody says, "Oh, it's coming on," the destruction is coming on, I think of all the people who have been drowned out. Now they're being starved out. It's been here for a very long time.
Can I move forward
Earth
with
abuse.
limited time?
Yes, have it.
And please go ahead.
I'll be quick. I think you began talking about this in terms of banking and so forth and public banks, but I was just from the worker perspective, there are about 15% of the US worker population is involved in the public sector. And I was just wondering how you fit that into your class analysis.
Well, it is not about only the public sectors. Our class analysis is not about the public sectors. Also, for this is similarly valid for the private sectors. In all sectors, you can see like those we have already discriminated two parts. One is skilled laborers and unskilled laborers. Now, on which grounds we are discriminating this? On which ground we are defining them? We are not defining on some particular skill. Because, for example, suppose a handicraft worker, a craft worker. So he or she has some particular type of skill that most of we do not have. So on what grounds we are defining this skill? We know that the skilled workers have higher wages, unskilled workers have lower wages, but which is the basis of the definition of this skill? That is being defined on the basis of whatever it is, public sector or private sector. The definition is a central definition that is based on how much you have invested to develop that skill.
Okay, I just am thinking about a garbage worker, for example. In
Yes.
this country, unionized most likely, public sector, and vital to the economy in every way we can imagine. Quite skilled, actually, when you think they're operating heavy machinery. And so where do they fit? Are they skilled or unskilled? Where do they fit in this class analysis?
Exactly, because and that is why we actually cannot define this skill. Suppose if I ask you, suppose if I ask you about some singer and some dancer, to compare between them, who is better, how can you define it? You cannot define, because they are not comparable. So you can compare them. In fact, in the old capitalist era, like at Marx's time, that was defined on the basis of labor power they are expending. But now it is not the labor power, it is the value of the labor power, the price, not the value of the labor power, but the price of the labor power, that is defined on how much you have invested to get that skill. So if you are running a very big machine, so you have invested a lot to develop that skill. And suppose a homemade worker, he has not invested so much for developing his skill. So he is being paid lower. So that is the origin of this discrimination. The point is how much you have invested in terms of money or in terms of time. You have, suppose you have studied in colleges, universities, and all then you already have your greater salary than the other for similar types of jobs.
Okay, so last person raised hand is Dev Dhanwa. Dev, please go ahead.
Oh, hi, Basu. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting discussion and a lot to think about. And so it's not something you can really absorb everything in one sitting. My question basically, as you said that the self-employed producers are proletariat or becoming proletariat. But in my view, the self-employed producer, he owns his own means of production, however small they, whether it's a small plot of land or shop, and he's selling his produce. So he's a petty bourgeois. He's not a proletariat. So how is in your analysis this changes?
Okay, I would like to again show the slide. I think this is a very interesting question, and we should Raj, I will take a few minutes for it.
Go ahead. Yes.
So
that's the last question. So go ahead.
can you see the slide?
Yes, we can see your slide.
Okay. So suppose one self-employed, he has some means of production that is suppose $100. As you can see, this CC, this is constant capital, you can say. So suppose he has some $100 he has invested on the raw materials and means of production, and his labor is valued at $40. So if he would sell his or her product in value terms, then it would be $140. But now in price terms, since he is not considering value terms, he is in a capitalist era, he is considering that he is a self-employed person, he is selling his product. So what he is taking, that his philosophy is that I have invested this much, I will have this much of return on investment. So the profit rate in market is suppose 10%. Then with this $100 as its investment on raw materials, he would add this 10% because he is not considering his labor in its part. He is considering this much as his investment. He is just adding this 10% of the investment, and now the price is $110 only. This is just an illustration, and I do agree with you that he is a petit bourgeois because he has means of production and he is selling his product, not his labor power, to any capitalist. But now he is a petty producer who is living up an amount of this much, this price minus value thing of his labor power, which is suppose here $30, to the capitalist society, to the capitalist owners. So now the point is, if he would take the philosophy of working class, that is the philosophy of labor value, then he would be a petty bourgeois, because petty bourgeois or petty producer, whatever we call them, because he would not produce surplus for the capitalist society. But now when he has adopted the philosophy of capitalist class, the irony is that now he is producing surplus for the capitalist society. So he has a means of production and still he is producing surplus for the capitalist society. So this is a superposed thing of petty producer and proletarian. So we are calling them semi-proletarian. They are now actually, they are not exploiting other workers, rather they are being exploited by the capitalist class as a whole. So this is a new feature.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think if you can turn off the yeah, okay. Thank you. So Basudev, thank you very much. I know it's kind of late for you. It's past 1 o'clock for you. We appreciate this. A very dense presentation from which I think is a lot of material for us to absorb, and we hope that you'll come back and expand upon it in the near future. I wanted to, but I'll take it with you, my own question later on privately with you, which we don't have time for. So thank you very, very much.
Institute for the Critical Study of Society at the Neoliberalism Marxist Library receives no corporate funding nor do we have any paid staff. We rely on the support of working class folks that share our commitment to the socialist legacy of Karl Marx. We continue to need funds to meet necessary expenses. Since we can no longer pass the hat at our in-person forums, please send contributions to our treasurer, either online via PayPal or by check. The PayPal ID is ICSS Sunday, SUNDAY, @yahoo.com, and the name is Richard Fallenbaum. And checks may be made out to Richard Fallenbaum and sent to him at 1225 Nielsen Street, Berkeley, California, 94706. Fallenbaum is spelled Fallenbaum. To donate directly to the Marxist Library, send a check to the Nebel Proctor Marxist Library at 6501 Telegraph Avenue, Oakland, California, 94609, or directly or donate online at www.paypal.me/npml. For information, write to npml at marxistlibr.org, and the website is marxistlibr.org.